I want to welcome everybody here. We've got a really good crowd to start the room this evening at 6, and I cannot hardly wait. I've been so excited to hear the update on the Big Cat Public Safety Act, since Carol has been in D.C. all week lobbying, and I know Howie's been working hard too behind the scenes. So, Carol, take it away.
Well, usually I need to kind of get people primed to talk about whatever they're going to talk about, but I don't think Howie needs any priming, so I'm just going to hand it off to him.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to assume that there may be some people with us who are not familiar with the bill, so I'm going to, give a little brief description of what it does, and then talk about the process of getting the bill through, so that you have the context for where we are in that process. So some of you will have heard some of this before. Excuse me. There are basically two problems the bill is trying to solve. One is these people who offer cubs for petting, and without all the detail, this is just a miserable life for the cubs. And then a few months later, they're too big, they're discarded, and if they survive, they end up in horrible conditions. The second is many of them end up with private owners, and those are people who are not licensed by the USDA as exhibitors, so they're not inspected by USDA. And these, they get these young cubs, and they're fun for a little bit, and then they end up in tiny little boxes in the backyard. We tolerate that for some reason in our society for tigers. But if I said to you, if you were to put your domestic cat into a dog carrier, a large one for its entire life, would that be humane? I don't think anybody would think so. And yet, some people seem to feel that having a tiger in a comparable sized enclosure is okay, and of course we don't. So what the bill does is two simple things. It stops the cub petting by requiring that the cubs be 15 feet from any person if they are not in an enclosure. That also stops the photo ops. And it phases out the private owners. Their current cats would be grandfathered in, but they're not allowed to breed or acquire more. And the way you would control that and enforce it is they're required rather, to register their current cats just once with the Fish and Wildlife Service, so that Fish and Wildlife Service would know if there was a complaint, somebody saying, hey, this person has added a new cat. They would have a baseline of what the cats the person had in the beginning. So it doesn't create any kind of burden on the Fish and Wildlife Service. That's a pretty simple thing to do. So the normal process for a bill going through the House or the Senate is called regular order. And that process, it goes to a committee for a hearing. And these committee chairmen are all powerful. They decide alone if a bill will get a hearing in the committee. So there are many bills that introduced, the majority of them never get a hearing. And then once they have a hearing, which is where they'll have people testify, then the next step is sometime later they schedule something called a markup. And that's where the legislators can discuss the bill. They can try to make amendments. In some cases, legislators who don't like the bill may try to amend it to, really take away the impact of the bill. And then they have a vote on whether or not to do what's called reporting it out, which is it leaves the committee with a recommendation that it go to the floor for a vote. The people who decide on that are the leadership in each house. So in the House in the House of Representatives, that would be Speaker Pelosi and the Majority Leader Steny Hoyer. And another important person in this process is called the ranking member. That is the most senior person in the committee from the minority party. So in this case, the Republican Party. And if that person is supportive of a bill, that makes it much, much easier. If a bill is bipartisan, then if that person is against it, and the other members tend to follow whatever the ranking member decides, the other members of that party. There is an alternative process that is much quicker. This process I just described to you, takes months as these different things get scheduled. In the House, that process is called suspension. And it's suspension of the rules. In other words, the rules of having to go through the committee. So it doesn't go through the committee, it goes direct to the floor for a vote. And usually that is used for very non-controversial things like, naming a post office. But there are other bills of substance that do go through. The difference is when you go through regular order, the debate can take a long time. Here, in suspension, the debate is limited to 20 minutes each side, and that's because it's expected that these bills are not controversial, and instead of a majority vote, you have to pass by a 2/3 vote. In the Senate, it's a different process. They have something called hotline or unanimous consent. And the way they do it there is they have a group of people whose job it is to poll the legislators. And basically they contact every office and say, would you be okay with this bill? The difficulty there is it has to be unanimous. So any one senator who says no, then you have to go back to regular order unless someone can convince that senator to change their vote. Now, back in 2003, the bill that we worked on, the Captive Wildlife Safety Act, was a bill that prohibited selling big cats across state lines as pets. And it passed by unanimous vote, by suspension in the House, not just by 2/3, but unanimously, and by this process of unanimous consent in the Senate. So, we have some precedents for that. Unfortunately, right now in today's environment, there are a couple of senators, one in particular, who are just known for just saying no to anything, no matter what it is. So very little, if anything, goes through this way, but there's still a possibility. Now, one of the critical things about suspension is the legislators are in session for a few weeks, and then they go home for a few weeks, they come back for a few weeks. So there's a limited number of spots on the calendar for these votes. And the normal process, the regular votes, the regular order votes, can take a long time. So they may be able to do 2 or 3 regular votes in a week, but they may be able to do 10 or 15 suspension votes in a week. So you have a much greater opportunity or chance of getting to the floor on suspension just because there are so many more spots. Slots on the calendar. But what you end up with is what is referred to as the funnel, where you have many bills who are trying to get a hearing with the committee. A small percentage of them actually get a hearing, and then the ones that come out of the committee far exceed the number of spots there are to get to the floor to vote. So you get these bills that are reported out but just never get a vote. And so the challenge is to be one of those that gets a vote. Now, in the case of most animal legislation, animal welfare legislation, and our bill, in general, it is more difficult to get Republicans to support the bill than Democrats. It shouldn't be a political thing, but this is a fact of life. Now, there are some Republicans who are wonderful about animal welfare, but many of them come from agriculture states, and their constituents view animal welfare as the enemy. They're battling over the things that they can do on the farm, gestation crates, battery cages, and these legislators don't want to piss off their constituents. So it becomes more difficult for them. You also have some who have a pretty extreme view of what's called states' rights, which is the idea that the federal government should do very little, and they want to leave more things to the states. So those are some of the hurdles. The one thing in our favor is, with our bill, is that generally Republicans are concerned about public safety, and particularly first responder safety, police officers, sheriffs. And so getting first responder support has been extremely helpful as a way to present something that would appeal to more on the Republican side of the aisle. And we've done a much better job of that. Over these sessions with the bill, we've added more and more first responder endorsements. This bill we've gotten this time, we've been working very closely with the National Sheriff's Association, who has endorsed the bill for years, to get more of the state associations to endorse the bill. And the reason that's important is one of the first questions that legislators tend to ask, if it's a senator, well, how does it affect my state? Or if it's a House member, it can be the state or my district. And so when we can go and say, look, your state sheriff's association supports this, that is very meaningful. And so that's been very helpful. So that's the context. So where are we? Last December, we managed to get the bill at the very end of the 2-year session. Each session is 2 years. We got it to the floor on suspension and achieved the 2/3 vote with about 10 votes to spare. But there wasn't time to do anything in the Senate, and so the bill dies, and now we start over for this 2-year session, the 2021-2022 session. The one advantage was, in past sessions, without all the detail, there were reasons at times where we couldn't get the bill introduced early on. This session, we could, and so we got the bill introduced very early, got a real jump start, and so now we have 250 co-sponsors, which is more than a majority, but even more important, 50 of those are Republicans. Last session at this time, at the end of 2019 versus 2021, we had 225 co-sponsors, so we have more, but very importantly, then we only had 19 Republicans, and at the end of the 2-year session, we only had 22. So we are way ahead in terms of the bill being bipartisan now. And what's been critical in this process is the grassroots of having people make these calls and send these emails. We've done tens of thousands of them. Somebody's microphone is open. If they could close it. And Carol was just spent 3 days in D.C., 3 incredibly intense days. Our lobbyists arranged for her to have over 30 appointments, just racing from one to the other. And many of them were successful. And so we expect to pick up some more co-sponsors. But in every office, they remarked to her that they had gotten more calls and emails over time on this bill than just about any other bill that they could think of. And so that was...
Woohoo! Pat yourselves on the back.
So that was very nice validation of all that effort by, that we've been doing. And the second thing that's been critical has been our great social media team, Deb and Karen and Carol and others. I can't name them all, but urging people to call and fielding questions when people have questions and guiding them. So that effort has been huge. And this time we have our lobbying group has been expanded, and we really have the A team in terms of lobbyists working with us. So that's where we are in the House. We're poised to be able to try to get it to the floor again on suspension, but we're waiting because of what I'm going to tell you about what's happening in the Senate. In the past, for session after session, we couldn't find a Republican to join Senator Blumenthal and introduce it on a bipartisan basis. Last session, we finally got 3 Republicans on the bill after he introduced it, which was a major step. This session, there's a huge difference because we got it introduced on a bipartisan basis by 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Senator Collins from Maine stepped up to be the lead, and Senator Burr from North Carolina joined. And then we got Senator Portman from Ohio, and that was largely due to the film The Conservation Game, which exposed Jack Hanna bringing the Cubs onto late night TV. That caused the new management at the Columbus Zoo to reverse their position and support the bill. And once the Columbus Zoo supported the bill, Senator Portman got on. Now, once we had 3, that made it easier to get the 4th. And so the 4th was Senator Marshall, a conservative legislator, senator from Kansas. And so we now have 4 Republicans, more than we've ever had before on the bill, and have it introduced on a bipartisan basis. Now, in the Senate, it's even harder to get individual bills through the process. What tends to happen there is the committees will try to create a package of bills that relate to their committee. So, like the Energy Committee might have a group of energy bills that they work out to be bipartisan and try to push through all at once, which is much more efficient, as you can imagine. So our committee is the Epw Committee, which is Energy and Public Works, and they are working on a package. The main bill in this package just had a hearing last Wednesday, and so that process has started, and there are some things scheduled on it for January. So we're hoping to get in that package. It's much more likely to be in the package if one of the Republicans who is on the committee is a co-sponsor. And we've been trying very hard to get one. We haven't gotten one yet, but we're still hopeful. Some of them, are just not likely candidates for one or other of the reasons that I mentioned earlier. But there are a few who are candidates. So we're kind of holding off on trying to get to the floor in the House on suspension to see if this package actually gets going and if we're in the package, because if we are, then the package goes through the Senate, it comes to the House as a package and is highly likely to pass that way. And so, we would defer to that. If the package doesn't happen, or we're not in the package, then we would hope to go to the floor in suspension in the House, and then, do everything we can to work our way through the committee process in the Senate. The bottom line of all this is the percentage chance of any bill that is introduced that isn't, the appropriations bill or, one of these major bills that you are listening to about on the news shows all the time. The odds of any bill that's introduced becoming law in a given year are almost minuscule. And this is the first time, we've built momentum over these sessions. This is the first time where I think I can honestly say that we feel that our chances are better than 50%. So we're really excited about it. It's going to take a lot more hard work and a lot more people like yourselves calling their congressmen, and you can call them repeatedly. You can leave messages. You don't want to be a pain, but we've seen examples where one constituent being persistent and say, well, tell me why you're not on this, has finally gotten action. So I would just encourage those of you who want to help with this to, be assertive about it. So that's where things are. I'm happy to take questions about the bill or how awful it is to live with Carol or anything else you want to ask about.
Howie, you're going to be in trouble.
Well, maybe we should stick with the bill.
Maybe we should. Oh, Daniel, you are first up. Did you have a question or comment for Howie?
Well, that's kind of hard because Howie is just like Superman for the big cats at this point. I guess I'll ask a simple one. Howie, of all the cats currently at Big Cat Rescue, who's your favorite?
Well, you shouldn't have a favorite child, but it turns out that we tend to, and mine would be Aria, the tiger. To come to us, she came to us probably in as bad a shape as any animal, as mistreated as any animal, and she just has such a sweet personality. It's just, I find I don't, spend a lot of time at the sanctuary. My work is mostly out of the house at a computer, or, out and about doing something that we need done. But when I do, I always stop and just sitting outside her enclosure and looking her in the eye is like a meditation to me.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to back up just a second. Karen, and sorry I skipped over you. What is your question? I know you have one.
I do, and as Howie was speaking, I was typing as quickly as I can in my notes to ask a million questions. But here's my question: is as much as I work on this, and as much as I study it, there's still so much that, from what you said, that just I could just love to dig into. But here's the thing that always comes back as a question for me, even because I can't figure this out. How do you know first of all, when will you know if it will be part of this package? And the other thing is, will you and Carol be alerted as to when it goes to the floor?
Oh, well, we'll certainly be alerted as to when it goes to the floor. We work very closely with the staff person in the offices of the sponsors. So until the end of this year, in Quigley's office in the House, Quigley is our House Democratic sponsor, so he's the main sponsor, and then Fitzpatrick is the Republican. But you tend to work with the lead sponsor mostly. So there's a very, very good man in that office, a young man named Max, and so he would know and would let us and our lobbyists know, and then we would put on a real full court press. Our lobbyist would be on the phone. This is what happened last December. We learned we only had, I don't remember, maybe a week's notice or less, and we were just on the phone calling everybody, encouraging the vote. At that point, you're not asking for co-sponsors, you're asking for the vote. And we only had 22 co-sponsors, Republicans who committed up front to vote, but we ended up with, I think, 48 votes, and that's what you want. There are legislators who, for one reason or another, will choose not to co-sponsor, but will tell you, look, I'll vote for it if it comes to the floor, but I'm not going to co-sponsor. And maybe and sometimes that could be someone who's concerned about pissing off some element in their district, like if there's in one of the ag districts something where they're sympathetic, but they don't want to take the heat of being a co-sponsor, but when it gets to the floor, they'll vote for it. So we have, I think, at least 15 who have said, not going to co-sponsor right now, but I will vote for it. So that was part of your question. As far as the package, they had the hearing, so they had a bunch of expert testimony, and the committee chairman said that he wanted the members to provide any questions that they had for the experts who testified by December 22nd, and then they asked if the experts could then respond to those by January 5th, and so presumably sometime after that, decisions will be made about the package. There is some controversy about this package because it has a $14 billion price tag, not for our bill, but for this major bill. So I think there are some people who may be concerned about that. But the bill has 15 Republican senators and 15 Democratic senators, so wide bipartisan support, and the committee all seem to generally support it. So, but we keep in touch. Well, regarding the package, the people we keep in touch with are the committee staff. So each legislator has their own staff that work for the legislator. Each committee then has a staff, and there's a Republican staff and a Democratic staff on that committee who report to the most senior person in the party, which is either the chairman, in the case of the majority party, or, as I mentioned before, the ranking member, the senior minority party person. And so those are the people who are working on the package with their chairman. And so they will let us and our lobbyists know if the package is going to happen and if we'll be in it.
Okay, I gotcha. It's so hard to believe and, hard to imagine, I suppose, that these people, to get their attention must be so difficult with all that's going on. I mean, if you just watch the news, you can see. So here's the last part. Would you rather be in the package? I know you said it's easier to get it passed, or would you and Carol rather be a separate bill?
Here's the order.
Okay.
If the package is created, it would be far better for us to be in the package.
Okay.
Our next choice, if we're not going to be in the package, we'd rather there be no package, because being left out of the package is probably the most difficult path if there is a package.
Okay.
So it'd be better if all the bills had to be done individually, and then we just try to make ours as much of a priority as we can, than be left out of a package that is moving forward.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for all you do. We're following you out here and supporting you, so you know that. And I will be quiet now. I have a million more, but we'll get to them someday. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I will mention before we move on, if anybody in the audience has a question, you can hit the little hand raise button in the bottom, and we will call you up on the stage if you have a question. So I did pull some people up, but if I missed you accidentally, or you decided that you want to come up or you think of a question, please raise your hand and we'll call you up. All right, Key, you are next. Did you have a question or comment for Howie?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Howard. Nice to hear from you. Thank you for all the work that you do for the cats. You and Carol, especially today, you did, such a good job. I'm from Long Island, so when I call my legislators, they tell me that they are going to vote for this bill. So I believe them. But I want to know how to influence people in states or legislators in other states that are not too keen on this bill. Is there any way we can, do anything like to call them or their offices?
Generally, they only want to hear from constituents. But the best thing you can do is, through your personal network, encourage people that you know in other states to call their legislator and help arm them with the ability to do that. And, we have to recognize that, first of all, 50% of the people, and I'm one of them, are introverts. And so, before I got involved in this, I never thought about calling my congressman. And they don't realize that, they think, oh my God, well, if I call, I don't know enough about this. And that's not what happens on the call. Each of these offices has one or two people sitting there answering the phone, taking the call, and writing down whether someone supports a bill or opposes a bill. Trying to leave a message with that person beyond that, I don't think ends up going very far, unless you get to actually talk to one of the aides. In each office, there will be a number of what they call aides, legislative assistants, and each of them will have an area that they cover, or a couple of areas. So, it could be animal welfare, and environment and energy, say. And so, when you talk to that person, there's a conversation. So when we go lobby, we hope to talk to that person, or talk to their boss, who's called the legislative director, or talk to their boss, who's called the chief of staff, or talk to the legislator themselves, which is very rare. In the case of our lobbyists, we have a couple of very senior lobbyists, people who have been doing this a long time, and they develop relationships directly with the legislators and the staff. If you've been doing this 20, 30 years and you became friendly with someone when they were a legislative assistant, and now they're a chief of staff in an office, well, you know them, you can call them and kind of move up the ladder. And so, but when we make the call the wild, it goes to the person at the front desk, and all people have to say is, I would like you to ask the boss to co-sponsor the Big Cat Public Safety Act. It helps if you give them the number, in the House number or the Senate number, and they write down, okay, I'll tell them, and they make a little hatch mark, or however they record, I got so many votes. And what I left out when I said that the offices were telling Carol that they had getting hundreds of calls, is they also said they weren't getting any calls opposing the bill. And that's because they're the only people really opposing it are mostly the cub pedders. The private owners are not organized. And so, in the last 18 months after Tiger King, one by one, the biggest of the cub pedders have fallen. So if you remember Tim Stark, the crazy guy, well, they were all crazy, so that doesn't help you. But Tim Stark has had all of his animals confiscated. Jeff Lowe has had all of his animals confiscated. And prior to that, Dade City Wild Things, the one near us who's been was torment to us for 20 years, closed down between USDA going after them, and PETA has done an amazing job. And PETA has recently gotten some really exciting court rulings, basically that the cub petting violates the Endangered Species Act. And right now, when federal courts make a ruling, that ruling is valid in that federal district. I think there are 9 federal districts. So it's not necessarily the law across the country until other jurisdictions do the same thing, or it goes to the Supreme Court and they agree. But in the 2 jurisdictions that those 2 that I mentioned were in, we've gotten these very good rulings. And meantime, the last major one standing is Doc Antle. He has been indicted by the Virginia Attorney General on trafficking charges and animal abuse charges. And the way that happened was they were investigating someone in Virginia and got that person's cell phone and found these texts between him and Antle that indicated that they were illegally trading animals back and forth or selling animals to each other. So Antle still has his animals, but is in trouble. So what that means is that there are very few of these people. Joe Exotic, when he was operating, used to get what was then his limited number of followers to try to make phone calls, but of course he's in jail and not effective at doing that anymore. So it was really gratifying to hear that they're just not getting any opposition. The one person who has been effective in opposition is a lobbyist who works for Antle, whose name is Frank Vitello. And it's one thing for a lobbyist to, their job is to kind of spin things and present them in the best way possible, but this guy just outright lies. And so we're having to overcome his lies. And in Carol's meetings, these things, she would ask, well, are you hearing anything that would cause you not to want to co-sponsor? And one or the other of these statements he's made, he claims that it creates overlap between Fish and Wildlife Service and USDA, and that's nonsense, because it doesn't change anything about what USDA does. USDA is only mentioned in the bill because there's an exemption for people who have a USDA license if they do not do cub petting. And so there's no overlap. He tells people that Fish and Wildlife is now going to inspect them like USDA does. That's a lie. Fish and Wildlife Service does not do inspections. They do investigations only if they have reason to believe that someone is violating the law. So that's what happened with Joe Exotic. They got information that suggested that he was trafficking and violating the Lacey Act by selling these cubs illegally and calling them donations instead of sales, and shooting the tigers. And so Fish and Wildlife Service did an investigation, and that's where you hear where they sent in a confidential informant who was wearing a wire, getting Joe on tape. And you hear all these people talking about which of the witnesses wasn't very credible, but it was really Joe Exotic himself who convicted Joe Exotic, because one juror put it perfectly. I don't mean to wander off, but she said to the media, look, when on tape, he said to the FBI undercover agent posing as a hitman that he paid the last guy $3,000 to kill Carol, and he ran off with the money. Well, that's pretty damning. She said we could have convicted him just on that without the testimony. So that's... Boy, what was the question I was asked?
You sound like me.
I'm on a roll here. I hope I'm not putting everyone to sleep.
I forgot what the question was, but the answer sounded really great.
Oh, your question was, what can you do in other states? And what you can do in other states is encourage people and explain to them that this is not a difficult thing, that this is very simple and easy. And if they're really shy, have them call at night or over the weekend and just leave a phone message with that little script that you find. Deb has put the Call of the Wild button there up on the top of the screen, I think, or it's bigcatact.com, bigcatact.com, and you can do it from your cell phone. You simply text a number and your phone rings and it asks for your address so they can determine who your legislators are. It calls the offices in succession for you. And when someone picks up, you just said, I would like to ask your boss to co-sponsor the Big Cat Public Safety Act, HR, and that's it. And they say thank you. And so you may have, if you explain to people that that's all it is, and that they can stop all this abuse, so much of it, that's the best way that you can have an impact in other states.
Exactly. Like in the beginning, I was kind of shy too, but with the recording, I used to do it at night. I used to do it in the morning, and I didn't have to speak to anybody but leave a message, and that was great. But then I became more brazen, and I just called during the day, and I spoke to the people, and they would tell me that yes, they are going to vote for this bill, and I thanked them very much, and I asked them if they would tell the legislator for me to pass it along to their, to the people that they know. And that's the best I could have done.
That's absolutely outstanding. That's fantastic.
And thank you so much for what you do.
Well, let me thank you. Let me say a little bit more about Carol's trip. Tiger King, the first Tiger King, the second Tiger King was kind of a non-event and got terrible reviews and really didn't have much impact, and it actually had some positive things. But Tiger King created 3 horrible months for us, but it has had some significant silver linings. And when it first happened, I was concerned we wouldn't be able to go out in public, that people would be hateful. And that's not at all what's happened. In fact, no one has been. Everyone who sees Carol, and occasionally me, but mostly her by far, has been either, very nicely asked for a selfie, or said something even positive and supportive. And we learned recently, and now confirmed this with other people, that in Europe, they actually totally got that the negativity was nonsense. And Carol's extremely popular in an almost universally popular or positive way there.
I was just invited to Belgium.
Yeah, she just got an invitation to participate in a television show that's going to be done in Belgium. So, but what happened was she was on a podcast with a European podcaster, and she said something about negativity, and he said, "No, you don't understand. There's no negativity here. We all love you." So this quote celebrity, we normally think of celebrities as actors and actresses, maybe sports figures. So it's very weird for her to be considered such a celebrity. And when our lobbyists were setting up the appointments for these 3 days, it's very rare that the legislator themselves meet with people. It's mostly the staff. And in the case of these appointments, close to half the legislators wanted to meet Carol themselves, and it was all very positive. There were some who we don't think are going to be good candidates for the bill, and one who flat out said no, but he still wanted to meet her. So at least she got his ear and a chance, which you don't normally get. And the lobbyists have been astounded. They said they had never ever been able to set up. They send emails out and try to get meetings, and they actually started they got to a point where they had to turn people away. And he said he had never booked a schedule for 3 days for anyone in his lobbying career like the 30 or more than 30 appointments that Carol had, racing from one to the other. And she didn't think about this at the time. She bought a new pair of shoes, and you know how uncomfortable new pair of shoes is. So she's sitting here with swollen feet because her feet are so sore from racing all over in those new shoes. So that's not an answer to a question. I just thought I'd ramble a little bit more since I'm on such a roll.
You are on a roll.
All right, let's go back to questions.
Carol, funny enough, I did notice in some of the things that were posted on Instagram that you had on news, and I thought, oh, I wonder if that was a good idea.
Not a good idea. Do not recommend it.
Lonnie, you're next. Did you have a question or a comment for Howie?
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to thank
Carol and Howard for all that they do for the cats and all that they've done for this, the act. And something that, what you said, Howard, just boggled my mind, which was, with all the checks and balances we supposedly have in government, in our government, a democracy, there is only one person who makes a decision on what bills go up for hearing.
Did I hear you? It's incredible. I mean, we've kind of had to learn all this ourselves over the last few years, but basically the chairman of the committee is the person alone. They don't vote. He or she decides whether or not a bill gets heard. In addition, individual legislators can have a huge impact, particularly more senior ones. So, for instance, on the House committee, there's one legislator who doesn't like our bill. It's ridiculous. The district this legislator represents has no cub headers and has one of the biggest sanctuaries in the country, and he just doesn't like the bill. And you can't get any rational answer from him or his staff. And because he's fairly senior, there are some other legislators who don't want to cross him because they may need something from him. So, even though he's not the chairman, he can have an impact, not necessarily on whether it gets heard, although possibly, but on whether it progresses well.
That's just mind-boggling to me. It's just crazy that one person has all that power. I thought our government was designed so that one person doesn't have all the, a bunch of power, and that just seems crazy to me.
Yeah, well, it was startling to me when we first learned it, but we just have to deal with it. So, where we're fortunate is that right now, last session we had a committee chairman in the House who was not disposed toward the bill. So it almost was impossible to make progress. This session, we have one who is extremely supportive, Grijalva, and so, that makes life much, much easier.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. That's very good to hear. And I'm crossing every finger and toe that it does pass this year, and I think there's good odds that it will. Hopefully.
Well,
okay, that's all. Thank you.
Well, most evenings Carol has her toes crossed, but now they're so swollen she can't do that. So.
Hi, Paula. Did you have a question or comment for Howie?
Hey everyone, it's great to hear this. I learned new. I'm still trying to wrap my head around this package that you talked about. But one thing I would like you to just clarify, because I don't know if I heard right, when the bill gets to the Senate, it has to be 100% votes, or it can pass by majority like in the House. And the other thing is, I was kind of looking at the calendar for this year, and if I'm understanding it with this package, most likely we're not going to have anything happen at the end, between now and the end of the year, right? If it's going to pass, it's going to pass next year. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, they've only got, I think they're leaving on Wednesday for the end of till the end of the year. So, it'll be next year, and it would be anyway because of what I described of the package. They're hoping to get the answers in early January. So the answer to that is no, it's not going to happen this year. Last session we managed in the last few days on short notice to go to the House in December. Was it December 3rd, I think? But we're not pressing to do that for the reasons that I gave you in the House. And as far as the Senate vote, the only time it has to be unanimous is if you want to not go through the committee process. So just like suspension on the House, that's a 2/3 vote. The Senate version, this hotline or unanimous consent, is just that, unanimous. If all the senators agree, then it can go to the floor without the committee process. So that's the difference there. If it does go to the floor, the vast majority of bills in the Senate require not a majority, they require 60 votes, and that's why you keep hearing about in the news about the 60 votes. Only there's one major exception, and you have to qualify for that exception, and there's a person in the Senate, I'm blanking on what they call that person, who is the person who determines whether that fits into that Senate rule for going through on a majority vote. So there's something going on right now, if you're watching the news, where they tried to have a vote to get 60 votes in order to authorize a majority vote on something, which sounded a bit crazy to me. I haven't quite followed it, but anyway, most bills that go through the Senate through the normal process require 60 votes, and so if it's a bill that is heavily supported by Democrats, it still needs 10 Republicans, and that's a rule the Senate made for themselves, and it has to do with the filibuster. And without getting into all that, but I mean, the Senate could change that rule, but if, let's say, the Democrats now in the majority change the rule and say, well, the heck with the 60 votes, we're just going to do it by majority, well, they like that 60 vote thing when they're in the minority. So it's kind of a two-edged sword, and there are right now a lot of Democrats who are saying, why don't we just do away with it? But Senator Manchin in particular, and I think one other, have said, no, we're not doing away with that. So, they have such a tight majority that one Democrat saying no means it doesn't pass.
Thank you for clarifying, and you and Carol are awesome, and yes, Manchin does seem to get it. Now, I don't want to be political, but that name, thank you.
Well, he's got a tough situation. He's in a state that actually generally leans the other way, and he's managed to keep his office. And he's a very interesting guy. I've been on some podcasts and heard him speak. He's very thoughtful. He backs up what he says, with logic. That doesn't mean you necessarily agree with him, but he's in a state where he needs to draw the independents and preferably some people from the other party to stay in office. So, that's, just trying to put yourself in his shoes. And when you only have a majority when you have 50-50 split in the Senate, so you only have a majority if the vice president votes to break a tie, then if you lose one of your Democratic senators, you no longer have a majority.
CJ, did you have a question or comment for Howie?
I do. Number one, Howie, you have got the most informative ramblings I have ever heard in my life. So you ramble anytime you want. I actually did not have a question. I just want to, for the benefit of people on the call who may not know as much about the Big Cat Public Safety Act and how to make the call of the wild, I wanted to let you know, some probably already do, that we do have classes in the group. And even if you are not a member of the group, we have a public group called Big Cat Rescue Official, where we have class. There is a class on the Big Cat Public Safety Act. There is a class on how to make the call of the wild. And there is a new class on contacting your legislators. This mainly relates to the Republicans that are kind of more, as Howie mentioned, on the public safety angle. He actually has gotten a hold of endorsement letters. We have 4 national endorsement letters, the National Sheriff's Association he mentioned, and there's 3 others, and also some state endorsement letters. And it's a different process, but you can actually send these endorsements from these national organizations, and if we happen to have any for your specific state, those can be sent via email to your legislators, and they concentrate on the public safety aspect. And the letters are fascinating. And we also have a video that can be sent as well that is from Sheriff Lutz from the Zanesville massacre. He supports the Big Cat Public Safety Act as well. We have a very powerful video that from him explaining what happened in Zanesville and why it is that he supports the bill. And that video, even if we don't have any state letters, that video and these 4 national letters, endorsement letters, can be sent, no matter what state you're in, to your legislators. So this is a great time to learn. If you don't know details, we have in both the Big Cat Public Safety Act and also in the Call of the Wild initial classes, there are Q&As, lessons in it. There is a lesson in the Call of the Wild for actually step-by-step how to make the call. There's a video of someone making the call, and we also have a lesson in there that tips for what to do if you're nervous about making the call. So you can get to those in either the Big Cat Rescue Group or in the Big Cat Rescue Official Group by going to the top of the screen right underneath the cover photo. There are tabs, there's an About tab and a Discussion tab, and there's one called Guides, as in, like user guides. If you click that button, it will take you to the list of all the classes that we have out there. We have about 20 of them. The very first one that's in there is some additional information about our rules, but if you just scroll down right underneath that rules class, there is the Big Cat Public Safety Act, followed by the Call of the Wild, followed by these Call of the Wild endorsement letters. And each one of them explains why it is that you should take the class and learn about it, and exactly how to do it, and the benefits and everything else. And if there's still something in there that you don't understand or you have questions about, you can leave those questions in the comment on the particular lesson. And if I don't know the answer, then we'll get back in touch with Howie. It's almost like talking to Howie, because all of the information in these classes ultimately came from him. So they're very informative, so I encourage everyone to check them out.
Carol, Howie and I are just grinning from ear to ear about the fact that you guys are doing such an amazing job getting everybody prepared to do this. And I wanted to congratulate you on whatever you did to your microphone, because I can finally hear you, girlfriend.
Actually, nothing different. Maybe I'm pacing in a different part of the house.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm really excited about the classes, and I hope that more people will, avail themselves of them, because they really are incredibly informative. Thanks to Howie. he took what I wrote and turned it into something that was much better than I ever could have come up with. So they're really great.
Thank you.
Nancy, did you have a comment or a question for Howie?
Yes, thank you. Hello, Howard and Carol. Thank you so much for everything that you did this week in D.C. I so appreciate all of your hard work. You're doing such a great job. I had 2 questions. I think Carol answered the first one. I'm going to go and look into all the information that she gave to us. I think that'll be what I need to help me out. And also, did you get a chance to talk with anyone from Alabama, or are you at liberty to say?
I was actually invited to the Alabama delegation. So they have these huge parties in DC for all of the different states. And once a month they'll all get together and somebody will sponsor food and drinks. And I did selfies all night long in front of the Christmas tree for the Alabama delegation. And we also got to talk to Congressman Tuberville?
Coach Tuberville was Carol got to speak with him, and we've had students from the university contact him, and our lobbyists have met with him. It's not a simple process. You don't go in and, I mean, it's very rare that you go in and one says, "Oh yeah, great, I'll do that." You almost have to nag a bit, and in sympathy, think about, I mean, they are getting constantly bombarded by people with all kinds of issues. So, how in the world they can keep them all straight in their head, and how anything stays on their radar. And then you get these massive bills like appropriations or Build Back Better, things like this, that are just, really consuming enormous amounts of time from everyone. So, typically it takes multiple contacts, not so different in some ways like the corporate sales process sometimes, where salesmen, people representing various things have to, repeatedly call before a decision's made. So Carol did get, and oh dear, what's the representative who you had met with from Alabama who signed on?
I don't remember. It was a blur in my head.
Sorry, it's getting a little tired here.
Is it Moore? Barry Moore? Marshall?
And Marshall's the senator. I think it's Barry Moore. Is an Alabama representative who signed on. I think he's the one where his two daughters dressed up as Carol for Halloween. So, that was kind of an interesting entree. So the answer is yes, we have had some contact with the Alabama delegation.
That's so exciting to hear. I just want to shout. That's great. That's great about the representatives too. And Senator Somerville is one who has contacted me back. I've gotten, I think, 2 letters back from him. I got one this week, so I'll continue to contact him. And I've spoken to his staff, and they were very nice. I've spoken to Mr. Shelby's staff, but I've not heard anything from him. But I'll just keep trying. But that's very encouraging. Thank you.
Well, and those calls, I really appreciate you're just persisting with those calls, professionally, politely, but persistently, because it keeps them in front of them, the bill in front of them.
Terry, did you have a question or a comment for Howie?
Hi, everybody. This is my first time speaking on stage on this platform, and I just want to say that Carol and Howard, I'm in awe of everything that you guys do. I know that only the 2 of you know how much you really, really do. Thank you to all the mods, to all of the staff and volunteers. And Lonnie, thank you for your little profile picture there. I kind of copied it a little bit. I apologize. I just wanted to say thank you again. I live here in Lakeland, Florida. Heard about Big Cat Rescue the summer of 2019. Decided I was going to wait till it cooled off a little bit, and then COVID. So I hope to one day be able to visit the facility. I support you guys, and I make the call to the wild nearly every day. Thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Terry.
you.
Hi, Dawn. Did you have a question or comment for Howie?
Hi, Deb. Hi, everybody. Hi, Howard. Hi, Carol.
Hi.
I just wanted to say I am very excited because all 3 of my reps finally co-sponsored the bill.
Wow. Where are you from?
Illinois.
Oh, great.
So I am so excited. And it was about like a little bit of pulling teeth, and I was like persistent. And I just kept going, and Carol had put on the Big Cat Public Safety Act, and let me tell you, I was hooting and hollering that finally Durbin co-sponsored the bill. So all 3 of mine are co-sponsors.
Well, and that's a great success story, and an inspiration to the other people who are doing it. When we have quite a few stories like that, where one persistent person just kept the bill on their radar until it happened.
And I sure did. So I just wanted to thank you guys so much. Thank you so much.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Hi, Lisa, did you have a question or comment for Howie?
Hi. I'm from Illinois too, and so one of my questions just got answered from Dawn. I had not heard that Durbin had signed on, so oh my goodness, I'm so excited. Yahoo! So I guess I'll send him yet another message and say thank you.
Actually, that's a really good point. It's very helpful when the legislator has co-sponsored to do that, to let them know people noticed and care.
Exactly. With my representatives, I don't know if it's helpful to anybody else, but you can amend, like if you use the stock letter that were given by you guys at BCR, I amended that letter before I sent it to say, thank you for sponsoring this, and please talk to your colleague in the Senate, Mr. Durbin, and encourage him to sign on as well. So you can amend that letter before you send it on to fit whatever situation your state happens to be in. So, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. I think part of my question was just answered. So I guess I'll just ask, thank goodness for you two dealing with the government, because it seems like such a spider web. I don't know how anything gets passed in a timely manner ever, as crazy as the system is. So my question to you is, as long as it takes and the persistence it takes, how do you deal with the stress of dealing with this crazy system and just keep going year after year? How do you do that?
Massive amounts of alcohol.
And caffeine.
We one of the things that we really believe is that if you image the result that you want, not as a wish or hope, but as if it had already happened, that somehow that message goes out to the universe and makes it more likely. And so, yeah, it's frustrating, but we're just very focused on continuing. We have learned to accept the hurdles and just say, okay, these are the hurdles, we're going to overcome them. It's not functional or productive to allow yourself to be frustrated about it. So, we really celebrate the victories. We
had champagne last night.
Yeah, well, we have what we call a brie and champagne night, and for us, I get these little bottles of champagne that just make two of those, relatively small, narrow glasses, one for each, and we have a little cheese, and so we make a point to celebrate when we get a new co-sponsor or other good things that happen, and just try to look at the part of the glass that's half full. Focus on the fact that, my goodness, we have 50 Republican co-sponsors in the House, whereas last year at this time we had 19, and look at the progress we're making. So that's how we have a little statuette, kind of statue thing that's about, I'm going to say 14 inches tall, and it's a chef holding a blackboard, and on the blackboard we have written along the way goals that we're trying to achieve, whether it was getting to the House floor last time. So right now it says that the bill passed, not passes, not will pass, but the bill has passed. And so we try to think of it as if it's already been accomplished. So I don't know if that's helpful to you, but that's kind of our attitude about it. So, we're just incredibly excited and upbeat. We're not sitting here bemoaning the hurdles. We're just so glad that we've jumped more of them this session than ever before.
I think that's wonderful. Positive visualization, cheese, and champagne.
Yeah.
Rock on. Thank you.
Well, and you also brought up a good point along the way, which is that in sending the emails, it is much more effective if you take that part of the email that's in our system and just rewrite it in your own words. And then even if it's just a sentence, it's better your sentence than our paragraph, because the ones that come in the same get kind of discounted as they quote form, and it is a form, whereas the individual ones, each one of those counts as a constituent, but they tend not to give as much weight to the ones that come in that are a form, even though someone took the effort, a constituent took the effort to send it. Still, you have much more effect if you change it.
That was my hope. Thank you. Hi, Kat. Did you have a question or copy?
Hi, everyone. My questions are answered. I was going to ask about the packaging of the bill, but it sounds like we're in a good place there. But as I've sat here listening to this, and so Carol, I was volunteering at the local rescue today, and looks like we lost Carol.
No, she's here.
Carol.
Oh, okay. She's with you.
Oh, the other Carol. Sorry.
Yeah. But I was listening to Carol's podcast, Howard, and it struck me. I wonder where this would all be today if she'd married one of those other men she was dating.
It would not be here where we are now, for sure.
I know. But Howard, thank you for joining us, and you're clearly such an asset, and appreciate everything you do. And excited for this to come to fruition. I'm very optimistic after hearing your update.
Well, I'm just grateful for you adding the ET to asset.
Yes.
Lobat, thank you for joining us tonight. Do you have a question or comment for Howie?
Hi, thanks for inviting me up. It's awesome to see everybody. I've been MIA for a while. I, of course, just want to thank you and echo what everyone's been saying, and I can't resist but echo that. So thank you. Amazed, in awe, and learning from everything you're doing. And I'm just sitting here listening and thinking how I can, be a better advocate for the act. And I'm just really just writing down my ideas and things about connecting it all with my network. So that's the first thing. Secondly, what is happening in Texas? I recently just come back to Texas from a lot of traveling. Any updates on Texas and what I can do here, other than the obvious?
We're actually making progress in Texas.
Van Dwyne just signed on.
Yes, Beth Van Dwyne is a representative who just signed on, and the more that sign on, the easier it is to get others to sign on, because they're not alone, and they say, well, if another Republican did, and I don't want to name a name of someone who isn't official yet, but there's another one who told one of our lobbyists that he was going to sign on, so making progress there. Senator Cruz is probably not a candidate for this. One of our lobbyists actually ran into him, and he kind of, sort of brushed him off. Senator Cruz is one of those very states' rights oriented people. But Senator Cornyn has been receptive, and that was one of the meetings that Carol had, right? You were with one of his senior aides in D.C. So there's been some receptiveness there, and I would encourage calling that office regularly.
Right. Yeah.
Also, are you familiar with the Texas Humane Legislation Network?
I'm not, no.
It's THLN, and I think their website maybe thln.net. The lady in charge of it is a woman named Shelby Bobowski, and they are very
amazing.
They're amazing. There's a few thousand of them in it all over the state, and they support state animal welfare legislation and have been active in the bill. In fact, Shelby was going to come up next week, and we've postponed it to January. But they've been visiting with Senator Cornyn and others, and you might want to. I would encourage you to join, and they will supply you with a lot of information and other opportunities to do things with animals.
Oh, awesome! Thank you so much for telling me me about them. I get caught up in my world and do my thing, and I would love to connect and have a better community here in Texas. So I really appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you so much.
If I might interrupt for just a second. Since you're speaking of Texas, there are, I believe, 4 endorsement letters for the state of Texas from various law enforcement organizations. And if you're one of the ones who is brave enough to send an email and attach one of these to it, you could actually send multiple weeks and, like one each week. And they are a fascinating read about what law enforcement has run into as a result of not having the Big Cat Public Safety Act.
Yeah, we have Texas, yeah.
Yeah, Okay, thanks.
Yes, no, thank you, Carol, so much. And I also want to thank you for the education that you're doing. I think that's brilliant. I was listening to that earlier, so thank you so much.
Cool, thank you.
One of those letters is actually the best letter I've ever seen endorsing the bill. It was written by Jamie Cantrell, who is the head of the Texas Animal Control Association, and had some personal experience with loose cats. And there were a couple other letters, and they talk about, like, one of them talks about something people don't realize is that, when one of these officers ends up having to shoot a cat, well, aside from the trauma of doing that, they end up getting hate mail because people don't necessarily understand that they may not have had a choice. So it really takes a toll on these officers in addition to the danger to them.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think I just, want to reiterate thanking you for doing this, because I really believe this is going to go through, and I really believe that it'll set a precedence for the rest of the world, which is so needed. And I know Carol is interested in this, as, her heart is also related out there for what's happening to the big cats and the rest of the world. We've talked about this before, but I really think this is the beginning. So I want to thank you. I'm learning, and I'm super excited about what the future holds. Thanks for all these tips, everyone.
Hi, Donna. Did you have a question or comment for Howie?
Hi, thank you. Well, first I want to thank Howard, Carol, all BCR team, and Deb for all the incredible things you do for the big cats and the amazing rehab bobcat you guys have, rehabilitation. What I want to ask is, besides thank you for all the information you gave about the bill and everything, I'm curious if it's something that's even possible about, like, going to, like, our local news channels, news stations, and trying to get them to get the word out in some form or fashion, to maybe get people to make, the call of the wild.
Well, one thing that I've seen people do is write letters to the editor, or even to get more involved and write what's called an op-ed and ask for it to be published. So we had someone in Arkansas do that, and a couple of newspapers picked it up. So that's one thing. I don't know, the TV coverage, you sort of need typically some...
A loose tiger.
A loose tiger, some incident, or, there was TV coverage when things were happening with Jeff Lowe and his animals being taken, stuff like that. It's hard. I'm just not familiar with people successfully getting television coverage when there isn't some incident. But when there is, it can be helpful. Typically they put it online now in addition to on air, and that you can comment. And so going in and commenting there can be helpful and may influence other people. And there's a place where you can, if there's an article that's relevant then to the Big Cat Public Safety Act, to go into the comments and say, look, if you want to put a stop to this, or if you want to help stop the mistreatment of these animals, go to bigcatact.com.
Okay, and then thank you. And I just want to say is, you know, these big cats that are in these zoos that have contracted COVID and have passed away, I just feel it's like so tragic and sad that I feel like if these big cats had been in a rescue and not in a zoo, this would not have happened, especially at Big Cat Rescue, because of the huge protocol you guys take to keep them safe. So it just deeply saddens me every single time I hear of a big cat in a zoo that is dying or has died of COVID.
Well, thank you. I think we all feel that way.
Yeah, so thank you so much, and thank you for the information, and I will definitely follow up and do what Rick suggested. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Donna.
Hi, Marcy. Did you have a question or comment for Howie?
Hi, Deb. My questions actually have been answered as well. So really just like everyone, thanking Howard and Carol and everyone for the work they're doing. And Howard got me with the aria being his favorite because I think folks know that if pressed, she is my favorite too. I'm thrilled that my New Hampshire representatives and senators are co-sponsors. And being a neighbor to Maine, I know Suzanne Collins is as well. And Vermont, I just saw that their two senators have stepped up and co-sponsored recently. And I too, as I'm sending out those emails, now I'm editing them to further say thank you. I know they automatically seem to transition to saying thank you once your senators are co-sponsors, but I edit them further and ask them, encourage them to talk with their colleagues and try to work with their colleagues to get them to co-sponsor as well. And I would just say, as a hopefully positive thing, next year is the year of the tiger, so I just see that as a wonderful way to celebrate this act passing. So that just gives me greater hope that maybe this will be the year.
And you're in New Hampshire?
I am in New Hampshire, yes.
I used to vacation in Franconia.
Okay, yeah, not too far away.
Did you ever hear about the Texan who went to New Hampshire?
The what?
The Texan?
Apparently not.
Well, he pulled up to this little farm, and you'll forgive my effort at the accents, and he called the farmer over and said, "Hey, y'all, how big is your spread here?" And the New Hampshire farmer said, "Whip, goes over to the cow, back to the barn, over to the well, back to here." And the Texan said, "Well, back home in Texas, I've got a spread where I can get in my car in the morning and start driving around the perimeter and not be back by nightfall." And the New Hampshire farmer looked at him knowingly and said, "Yep, used to have a car like that myself."
Sounds like a New Hampshireite, absolutely.
All right. Is there anybody else, or we're way over time? But I'm happy to answer if there are.
I think Joyce.
Howie, we have one more person, and that's Joyce. Joyce, did you have a comment?
Uh-oh. Joyce, you're still on mute.
There we go. I couldn't get my microphone to go up. Well, this is not an Howard. You guys are doing great work, and I have always thought that of you guys. But two things. One of them is that I was so impressed that we have 3 Illinoisans here, and we're all excited about Dick Durbin. But I was trying to take credit for that myself, but I guess I can't. And so when I was looking at the list of people that had signed on, I found a place there on the actual webpage that lists all of the senators or all of the any legislators that have signed on. There's a place there that says that you can email your senator or your representative, and I had not seen that before, so I used that as another means of talking to. At this point, Durbin was our only one left. Of talking to him and saying, "Would you?" I went right through that website as just another alternative, and I thought that was an interesting one.
What website are you referring
the
to?
regular, when you go to congress.gov,
Yeah.
And then you go and you look for the bill, or when you go to the bill, I don't have those links in front of me, but they are on they're on the Big Cat Facebook pages and on your website. And you get the list of the people that are signed on. And you can get the list of the people that are signed on and not signed on. So you get the list of, like, what senators have signed on and what have not signed on.
Oh.
And when I go, it says you can press the button that says send your representative feedback or send your senator your feedback. And I had never seen that before. It's just on the right-hand side toward the top, and I'd never seen it, so I tried it. And I tried it, and the next day, Durbin signed on, so I, of course, was going to take credit for that, but I don't think I can. It's just an alternative way, another way to approach them, I think. But that's basically all I wanted to say. I did email Republican senators from other states, but I did it, and I said, this is the first time in my life I've been embarrassed to be a Republican, because this bill should be one that you sign on. I heard back from two people, Mitt Romney and somebody, Wicker.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I heard back from both of them.
Really?
They were very polite, but I thought, I don't think I moved them because neither one are on there, but that's the approach I took.
Interesting.
So yeah.
Well, Wicker is actually on the EPW committee, so he's a good one to reach out to. Okay, well, I think that's the last person on the list. Thank you all. You've been very patient. We're 20 minutes over, so but I appreciate everybody attending and appreciate all of your individual efforts on the bill. It is working, and
Deb will have an announcement.
Oh, I guess. Well, Deb, I guess I'm taking your job from you. Why don't you go and close things out?
Howard, you're doing fine. So just one other thing I want to mention. If you're in the audience and you're not sure if your representative has signed on, you can go to bigcatrescue.org/house and bigcatrescue.org/senate and find the lists of those who have signed on. Next week, we have a really awesome guest. It's Marty Irby, and Marty is the lobbyist who was with Carol this week, and he is actually the executive director of Animal Wellness Action in Washington, D.C. And one thing I found really interesting about him, he was named by the Hill as the nation's top lobbyist for 2019 and 2020, and I think Carol would agree that he's done a great job for the Big Cat Public Safety Act in 2021 too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's been amazing. I mean, the work he put into setting up this schedule for Carol and getting her around to the offices, and it was a moving target because an office would cancel because something came up, or the legislator had to go vote. And Marty would fill in with another one and change the schedule. And if you've ever been around the Capitol, the Senate buildings and House buildings are on opposite sides of the Capitol, and sometimes you can go through tunnels, and it's.
Except we couldn't because Bob Dole was in the middle of the Capitol.
Oh.
So we had to go all the way around.
Anyway, he's really amazing.
So he will be our guest next week. And then we have some really wonderful things coming up because we will meet on Christmas Day evening, and on New Year's Day evening. And we have some really great things I'll tell you about later. And then we have a guest on the 8th of January that none of you in this room are going to want to miss. And I won't tell you who it is now, but I promise you will not want to miss it. And so be sure to put that on your calendar so you don't miss it whenever these next few weeks roll around. So next week is Marty Irby. Carol, did you have anything else?
Just everybody unmute your microphone and let Howie know you love him.
Well, that's that. Thank you. All right. Good night, everybody.